What's up, guys? T here. Today's tip's going to be on managing production efficiency, and this is an extremely important aspect of Hearts of Iron 4, as the better you manage your efficiency, the more supplies you're going to be able to produce, and therefore not only have better supplied troops, but also more troops, and you'll be able to get your new upgraded equipment out to the front lines fast. For those of you new to my channel, this is part of my Hearts of Iron 4 Quick Tip series I run on Mondays and Thursdays. I have lots of helpful Hearts of Iron 4 videos on my channel, so be sure to check those out and subscribe for more. Alright, so a couple little basic starter details just so we make sure everybody's on the same page is that the total need function, if you hover over it, shows you your daily balance, which is how many you're producing per day, and it'll also show you an estimated how many days it'll take for you to be at full force. You'll have all the equipment you need. Another thing you're going to notice here is the icon here, and that just says that we're reinforcing. That means it's going to the front lines. This means we're upgrading, which means it's going to replace older equipment on the front lines, and this is being stored in the warehouse, and the warehouse is the logistics tab basically, and in here you can see the same thing we were just looking at, that we're gaining 153 per day and that we need 65,000. So that's another way to check where you're at with your stats, and I actually like using this screen a lot more. It just makes it a little bit easier for me. Plus, if you're positive, once you have the filled, if you go here, if I hover on it, it doesn't actually show me how many I have. So you actually have to go to the logistics tab to see how many you have, which you can see I only have 2. But regardless, you have to do that to see that. Now that's now that that's covered, and we can start to move on to some of the actual complicated numbers behind what's all going on here. And the first thing is just to understand that one factory is 5 production. That's your basic output. Everything else on top of that, more or less, is all modified by all these different modifiers that Hearts of Iron 4 has. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the total production output calculation. So what this is the total amount of production you're getting based on all the other modifiers being calculated in off of that base output. So just bear with me just for one sec, because this does get a little bit into math, but basically how it works is you take your base output of 5, you multiply it by whatever percentage modifier you have of factory output. So right now we're increasing by 70%, indicated by the green percentage indicators down there. So 5 times 1.7, so plus the 70%, so it's increasing the 70%. And then you're going to take that new output and you're going to multiply it by your number of factories to get your basically your raw output, and then you have a certain amount of efficiency by the production efficiency, and you're going to take whatever your production efficiency is of that raw output. So 60% of that for us is going to be 76.5. That's how you calculate total production. And the reason this is really useful to know is for when you're choosing your industrial research trees and your focuses, it's actually really important to understand how that ties in with what actual buffs you're getting in those tech trees, because sometimes it's kind of confusing. Another quick thing before we get into the tree is I want to explain is just the fact that production efficiency moves around based on different things. So your basic your net growth, your daily growth is going to be plus 0.25% every day. So if you're at 50%, next day you'll be at 50.25, 50.5, 50 points, and so on. You understand. The next thing I want to explain is when you swap different equipments and you change your productions, the penalties that incur on those swaps. So if you just swap, say like I have a light tank 2 and I have a light tank 2 Mark A because I modified the gun, it's only going to lose 10% efficiency. So if it's at 60 right now and I swap it out, it's going to go down to 50. So not bad. The next one is a little more intense. That's a direct upgrade. So if I wanted to go from infantry equipment 1 to infantry equipment 2, I would lose 50% of my efficiency. So I would actually be down to 10%. The next type of penalty is the basically it's a different model of the same type. So if I had a light tank 2 and then I had a light tank 2 SPG and I swapped, I would lose 70% of my efficiency. So at this point, which brings me to my next point, is the minimum efficiency you can have is 10. So even though I'm losing 70, it would only take me down to 10 because the minimum you can have is 10. Obviously, if 0, you're not going to be building anything. They don't make you go that low. But the 70% comes into play. Obviously, if you have like 100% efficiency, you can go down to 30, so you still have some more. And the next one up is if I change from a light tank 2 to, say, a medium tank 1, they're both tanks, but they're different types of tank. That's an 80% penalty. So if I was at 100, I'd go down to 20. If you're at anything 90 or less, it doesn't really matter because you're going to go down to that 10 regardless. And then any other swap, like if you just change from infantry equipment to whatever, just a total flip, that's just going to drop you all the way down to the minimum of 10%. So that's something to be aware of when you're choosing and planning your production, because if you lose that efficiency, as we saw in the calculation, that really cuts off whatever you're going to do. So even if we have 130 raw output, if we have 10% efficiency, we're only going to get 13 production as our total production. So you got to be really aware of keeping that efficiency as high as possible. So that means not swapping factories, not swapping assembly lines, really being mindful and having a game plan for the future of what you want to build, what you're going to need to build. For example, I build quite a bit of support equipment even relatively early on when I don't have the stars, to put it in my division template, but I know I'm going to need it, so I build it from the beginning. It's just the planning, taking that time to plan that can really save you some production efficiency and really help you get extra equipment on the field and give you that edge. So now for the part that I'm personally excited for, because I actually get to show you how to manipulate some of these factors via the tech tree and other aspects. And so the actual way to do this with the industry tab is the production line is going to affect your production efficiency cap, and this is very straightforward as it sounds. The production efficiency cap goes up by whatever the amount is. So it starts out, it goes up 5%, it goes up, the 10. That's just the way it is. The thing to see at the bottom one, though, is where it differs. You get production efficiency growth, or you get production efficiency retention. What the production efficiency retention is going to do for you is it's actually going to take that 50% that you see there on your screen, and anytime those swapping penalties we were talking about, it will negate 50% of whatever it is. And not 50% is in half of whatever the penalty is. It'll literally subtract 50% of the penalty. So if it's a 10% penalty, it's going to negate it. If it's a 50% penalty, it's going to negate it, because 50 minus 50 is 0. 70% penalty, it's going to go down to 20. 80% penalty is going to go down to 30. So that's how that works. And then the other one is going to be your production efficiency growth. And what this is going to be is an extra 25% of your production efficiency gain. So as we were saying, it gains by 0.25% before, it's going to gain 25% faster. So the difference between the two really comes down to, one is going to give you the ability to swap models, swap in new things, and really retain your efficiency. Whereas the other is, if you are just gaining factories rapidly, and you want to grow efficiency, what you're going to want to do is that one, because it's going to help you get that efficiency up. So it really depends on whether you're gaining territory to conquer, or if you are sitting and just swapping out your own assembly lines at home. So your fascist nations, your maybe communist nations that are going to be conquering territory and gaining new factories continuously, I would probably recommend doing efficiency growth, because you're going to have new factories being added all the time, factories disappearing, factories popping back up as they get repaired, and you're going to be going up and down the number of factories, so you're going to want to have that growth there. The other one, the efficiency retention, I'm going to recommend for your democratic nations, your liberators, because you're not gaining new factories as you conquer these lands. You are actually just say you're, now I can't say that's a universal rule, but say you're the UK liberating France. You're not conquering that territory. You're giving it back to France. You don't get those factories. So you're going to need to be at home swapping out assembly lines based on what your needs are as they change. So you're going to want to not get those swap penalties, as let them hit you as hard. The other really important aspect of production efficiency in this screen is the industry tab, and you got your dispersed industry or your concentrated industry. And the difference between the two, obviously your dispersed industry, you're less vulnerable to bombing, which, okay, that's good, but that's not what I'm going to focus on. What I'm going to focus on is the factory output versus factory output and production efficiency retention. So the difference here is going to be the fact that factory output, that's going to be a 20% modifier, increasing that base raw output, and again 10% modifier. And then the other thing is going to be your production efficiency retention. So what you're going to have with that is if you're doing the swapping. So I'd recommend using dispersed industry if and only if you know you are going to be swapping out your assembly lines very often. So like you don't have a lot of factories, you're going to need to be going from one item to the next relatively often. That's when I would do dispersed industry, because by the time you get down to like 1941, 1943, you're going to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus 50. You're going to have 100% efficiency retention. So you're going to be able to swap around lines and different things like that. The thing though is, if you have the ability to keep your lines the same and just keep adding factories, you're going to want to do concentrated industry every time, because that extra factory output, if you can keep your efficiency high naturally by not having to swap, that extra factory output is going to help you immensely. So that's kind of the 2 cents on that, and that's a personal decision you got to realize at the beginning of the game. And then the last little thing I want to drop on you guys is just real quick the Naval Production. It's quite a bit simpler than the Army Production, not as many numbers going on. All it is one dockyard is 2.5 base output. So same calculation as we were seeing before. You're going to see that they are also affected by the factory output modifier of the plus 20%, but they lack the efficiency modifier, so they always are 100% efficient. So that's why if you want to build one ship and then swap to another ship the next time, there's no worry about that. You just build whatever you want, whatever you feel you need at the time, because there is no efficiency changing. So you can be a little bit more fluid, I would say, when you're using your ships, because there is no penalty for making up whatever you want to do at any given time. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap this video up before it starts to get too long. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. If it helped you, please share so others can find it. For more tips, be sure to subscribe, and as always guys, thanks for watching.